Now, this is your 10th year now into 2023 because you went the first time in 2013, right?
God, make me feel old. Yes. Yes, it's 10 years of boot camp for me. And granted, there were a couple of years there where I couldn't go. So it wasn't 10 years straight. So I'm sure, I think BJ has me beat on the straight ones. I think he went, my host, BJ, I'm here in Seattle. I don't know if we need to say that, but I'm here in Seattle on KISW with the BJ Migs show, and I'm the producer of the show. And BJ is, notorious at boot camp. We've been going since the first boot camp ever happened, 35 years ago, literally. And he's been to almost every single one except for the weird pandemic years. I think he's only missed one or two. And for me, I missed 2019. 2019 and then 2022. 2021. God, see, I'm telling you.
And that's the year I first went, so we didn't meet each other. I didn't meet any of your show or anything.
No. Yeah, that was the year. I mean, 2021 was definitely post-pandemic to where, things were still shutting down and stuff. And even though, like, it was semi-back opened, there was just people that didn't feel comfortable traveling at that time still. So we decided not to do 2021. And in fact, we actually weren't going to do 2022 either until, one of my coworkers, Joey, and I, BJ's son, who's also on our show and does our podcast and everything. Me and him got together and we were like, hey, we're going to boot camp this year. If you guys want to come, like, feel free. And they all jumped back on the bandwagon because we were like, we're going to make this happen. Like, we love boot camp. And, it's just such a fun event every year. And so for me, it's crazy to think that with those breaks there, it's crazy to think that, because it was like 2019, I didn't go because I had to be in a wedding. I still hate my cousin for that, by the way. Choosing boot camp as the weekend. But yeah, I didn't go 2019. The rest of my show did. And then 2020 obviously was what it was. And I did the virtual one and I hosted a panel that year, the producer panel. And then 2021, we didn't go at all and weren't involved at all whatsoever. And then finally made our return last year. And then this year, look at you guys, I'm working for you.
And I know some of this was briefly mentioned on the other episode, but I do want to talk about, like, that first year. That was the year that you were willing to just, like, sleep on people's floors sort of thing to get out there.
So it was a weird year. And the first year that I went happened in such an odd way because at the time, at the beginning of 2013, I was still in Albuquerque, New Mexico, on a show called Morning Mayhem with Carlos, Kiki, and Danny. And we, it was on 90, at the time, the station was 93.3, whatever. 93.3 KOBFM at the time. I think they've rebranded now to the Q, but it's the exact same station. But they I was working for them and I was producing for the show there, and that's where I got my start in radio. And I'd been hearing because of Wise Brother Media, I used the Complete Sheet and Delicious Audio, and they had launched a new service at the time called Studio Think Tank. And Studio Think Tank, as everyone knows, is radio social media. And so it was one of those, you get to go and share ideas and stuff. And so I was really active on that because I wanted to, get ideas for my show. I also realized that it was like a really good networking tool. And around, I think, so that was early. Well, I was on Studio Think Tank since probably, I think it was late 2012-ish, probably even earlier than that. And I don't remember when they actually launched. But then, so had been posting different ideas in there, kind of networking here and there. And I kind of got like connected with like Dave Ryan and Rick Rumble and Eric Rao and, a bunch of people who had been kind of going to boot camp for years. I didn't even know what boot camp was at the time. But around the time that Don announced that it was going to be in Chicago that year, 2013, people started ramping up talking about it and like, hey, if you're going to boot camp, like, check this out. Or and I think there might have even been a post in there like, what is boot camp? And somebody like was like, oh, you need to go to boot camp. It's, a big radio convention that happens every year. And it's awesome for networking. So the minute I read about it, I was like, oh, so it's basically Studio Think Tank in like a conference form. Mind you, this is my first job ever. So like, I didn't know that actual conferences were a thing. So when they were like, other businesses do conferences and you go and get together and go to, and I was like, So it just sounded really cool. I was just like, all right, well, at this point, I'm the producer.
What are you envisioning at that time, I guess, when they're talking, especially with it being called Morning Show Boot Camp? Like, are you like the ropes courses and those kind of?
Honestly, it's hard to go back to that mindset because I don't remember exactly what I was thinking it was going to be. I think maybe I thought it was going to be more like class based. Like I thought it was going to be meaning like you would go and you would take classes, or you would go and like you'd sign up for classes, and then so when I brought it, I didn't think I was going to be running miles. But no, it was definitely something that like I didn't know really what to expect other than them just saying like it's a big radio convention where we all just get together and share ideas. But then it was like, all right, like I don't really know what that means, but I'm in, like, let's go. So I remember going to my PD at the time and my co-host actually, and I can't remember if I went to my co-host first, and I said, hey, like, I want to, there's this thing called Morning Show, and he was like, oh yeah, Morning Show Boot Camp, I've been to that before, and I was like, wait, what? And he's like, yeah, we went years ago, and we haven't been since, and I was like, well, I kind of want to go this year, a lot of my friends that a lot of my online radio friends that I'm communicating with in Studio Think Tank are going to be there, and everyone's saying like we should go to this. And he's like, yeah, like it's not really my thing anymore. Like it's really like, he's like, I'll tell you, like Morning Show Boot Camp's fun, but like you really go for the drinking at the bar. Like if you want to go and party, that's one thing, but like it's not really, you don't really get a ton of ideas. And I was like, and I'm not saying that he was wrong by any means. I think that was just kind of his interpretation of it. But I was like, nah, I still want to go. And I think I even went on to Think Tank after that and was like, is it worth going? And the people were like, no, it's worth going. Like, you need to go to the panels. You need to go. Just come with an open mind. And for me, that's been easy. That's been my whole life. I'm just down to go do things. I don't really have an ego with things. I don't really think that things should happen a certain way. I just was like, I don't even know what this is. Like, let's just go and experience it all. So I could tell that they didn't want to go. My co-host didn't really want to go. So I went to my PD and I was like, hey, like, I want to go to Morning Show Boot Camp. Is there any way you guys can help me out with it? And the answer was no. It was basically just like, hey, like, like we support you going and stuff, but like we can't help you financially. What we can do is we can give you the days off and you don't have to take any personal time. And I was like, whatever, like that's fine. Like I'll figure it out.
It's more than some do.
Right. And so at that point, like, I was super disappointed with it all. And I went to back to Studio Think Tank with my like tail tucked and was like, hey, like, I really want to go, but like, I'm not really sure how I'm going to get there because, at the time I'm making $20,000 a year. Like at the time I was newly married, just moved out like to a new house in Albuquerque and just didn't have a lot of money. So it was like, well, how am I going to do this? And I remember it's foggy to me now, but I think that Rick Rumble was one of the first people that responded to it and just basically said like, if you make it out there, I'm going to buy you your first drink. And I was like, okay. And your second and your third drink. And I was like, all right, well, I mean, at least I got my drinking covered. So yep. That's important. So, but it was kind of like one of those, like me, and I don't remember, it wasn't like a sob story for me of being like, oh, how am I going to make it? It was more of just like, hey, like, is there anyone that can offer me some advice of getting there? Because I think it's really important. So then Zach Jackson reached out and said, if you want to come, like, you are more than welcome to stay on my floor or like stay in my room with me. And at that point, now knowing Zach Jackson's and I relationship, I would have totally just cuddled him all night. It would have been fantastic. And you know what? I think he probably would have done the same thing. But, at the time we didn't really know each other that well, except for just over online. And so it was, at that point, I was like, all right, I can afford the registration and I have a place to stay and I got my first 3 drinks paid. Like, I'm going to make this work. Like, I don't care. I was going to pay out of pocket for my flight. Then just some things happened where I ended up not working for KOBFM the rest of that year. And I ended up getting a job with Wise Brother as kind of the face of Studio Think Tank because I had just been there. And then I ended up taking that job, which is based in California. And I told them at the time, I was like, hey, like, here's one thing. I already paid my boot camp registration. I was planning on going, stuff like that. Find out that Wise Brother is a big sponsor of boot camp. And they were like, oh, well, since you already paid, like, we'll just bring you with us.
Did you know already that they even go to this?
I think I did, but not to the extent that they did. You know what I mean? It was like, I knew that they were involved with boot camp. I knew that they advertised for boot camp, but I didn't know what that meant. And I didn't know, again, I didn't really know what I was getting into. Like, I didn't know that there was going to be like, you know, tables there with like sponsors and, you know, all the above. So it's just, I didn't really know what to expect. But at that point, I still wanted to go because, you know, in my mind, I'm still working for radio. I'm just producing 1,500 radio stations as opposed to just one. So for me, it was very much like, I still want to go. I still want to network. I still want to make this happen. And so I told, you know, the guys over at Wise Brother, and they were like, yeah, definitely. Like, we'll bring you along. And you could just be kind of like, we need help setting stuff up and, you know, doing all the things. And I was like, all right, cool. Like, so they paid my flight. That was a long way to say that.
How perfect though for you. It all kind of came together like that.
Yeah, I mean, it all worked, and it was really cool to like go and then, you know, but a very different experience than I thought it was, because at that time, like, because of Studio Think Tank and because of knowing so many people, I didn't know anyone in radio before Studio Think Tank was born. I knew people in Albuquerque, kind of. I knew people on my station, and that was about it. Like, you know, the people across the street. My favorite, growing up in Albuquerque, my favorite radio show was Buck and Dex, and they were on 104.7 The Edge. And I used to like listen to them on my way to high school, but I never met them. And I was so intimidated to like go and actually say hi to them. Even when I worked in radio, it was like one of those things of like, I don't know who they. So Studio Think Tank was really one of the things, and actually connected me with Dex from Buck and Dex more than I had ever at a Rich Ford remote, you know. So it was really cool to like, you know, network that way. And then because of that, like, so my first time going to boot camp, I go as, you know, employee of Wise Brother, and everyone knows me. And it was crazy just in terms of just because of Studio Think Tank, but then also because like then I had, you know, announced on there that I had taken the job. So everyone's like congratulating me that I had like taken the job at Wise Brother.
Soon before was that? Like how many months before boot camp did you actually get the job?
I accepted the job early June. I think it was like June 1st.
Oh.
I moved out to California the end of June, which was, I think we left like June 27th. We were fully out there and like moved into our apartment by like July 1st. And then boot camp was a month later. Going to boot camp for the first time is like the biggest, like it's the most exciting thing ever, because it's like you see these people online. Yeah. You've networked with them, you Facebook, Studio Think Tank, you Twitter, whatever it may be. But then you go and you actually get to meet them. It's like meeting a celebrity. You're like, and it doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't matter if they've been in radio 1 year. It doesn't matter if it's been 50 years. Like it's like meeting your favorite people, and you're just like, what is happening? Like, it's so cool.
Most people that I talk to on here feel really awkward once it becomes time for, like, they get excited like you're talking about, but then feel awkward to have those conversations, which I think is funny because we're, you know, known for, you know, egos and guys that like to talk about themselves, or guys and girls that like to talk about themselves and all this. But then when they get around each other, like a lot of them are like, oh.
You know, I think that there's a lot to be said about just our, you know, and it's not just our industry, it's any entertainment industry. I think that there's, you know, unfortunately, I'll say it this way, and people can get offended, I don't care. But, you know, there's just a lot of ego in the entertainment industry just in general. I mean, you know, outside of radio, I can think of a million different things that it's exactly the same. And I think that, you know, you get so when you're in your own little market, wherever it may be, even if it's top 5 market or something like that, you get in your own little bubble, you get in your own headspace, and you just get comfortable doing what you're doing. And then I think that's like when you get face to face with people, especially your peers who have the same job as you and stuff like that, it's automatically like, oh, they must be judging me. And it's like, you know, I think that's just a very natural way to be, you know, except for when like you actually get there and you realize that it's just super exciting to meet people. Don't be wrong. There's still awkwardness at boot camp. There's still, you know, people judging other people. That's just human nature. But at the end of the day, I think that boot camp has created such environment where everyone is kind of supportive of each other these days that it's really nice to just go. And you know, the way I grew up on Warped Tour, and, you know, we always joked with Warped Tour being like these pop punk, like reject emo kids that, it was like every year we looked forward to Warped Tour because it was punk rock summer camp. And that's the way I look at boot camp. It's the exact same way. It's, it's radio summer camp. Like we get to go to Chicago, we get to go to Dallas, we get to go to Atlanta, wherever boot camp's happening, and we all get to see our friends. It's like just kind of a good reset. And then you get all the ideas and creativity out of it. And it's just like this great reset of a mindset, so you can go back into your show and just really, really, take it a different way.
And that's what I like that people feel about boot camp, because I think there has been different perceptions of what people think it is, but I want it eventually for everybody to look at it that way, that this is the summer camp thing. It's fun. I want to go. I don't even know what the panel subjects are yet, but I'm going to go because I know they're going to be good. And at the end of the day, I'm going to get to see my people that know me and what we love.
And for the first, 3 years that I went to boot camp, because 2013, 14, and 15, I didn't even get to sit in on the panels. And granted, it's because I was a sponsor. If you're a sponsor, it's a very different vibe than going to boot camp if you're working. The dumbest comparisons I've ever made, and it's because I'm just I enjoy sentimental movies. Okay, Marie, don't make fun of me. Is Devil Wears Prada.
I love that movie.
It's the best movie in the genre.
Oh my God, I love that.
Oh my God, I wear a face mask and watch it right now. No, I love Devil Wears Prada, and there's the part in the movie where oh God, what's his name? The guy,
the boyfriend.
No,
the designer.
The designer guy. What's his name? I can't think of.
Oh, yeah.
I can't think of his actual name. Stanley Tucci. Stanley Tucci's character in it, who, he's kind of like the assistant and works for Miranda. I don't even know if he's an assistant. Whatever he does, he works for Miranda, and it's like, every year he has to go to Paris. But then there's the line where he thinks he's going to get the new job, and he's like, I finally get to go to Paris and enjoy Paris. That's the way that it is with boot camp when you're a sponsor versus differently. And granted, I know that it's not 100% that way. But when you're working something, it's just a lot different than when you get to go as a spectator.
Yeah, I was going to say that a good transition, because I was going to ask about that, is that you went originally, you're like, shit, I can finally go figure out this thing, and be the guy, get the ideas. And then all of a sudden, you're going in with Wise Brother, which is great because, you're getting things paid for and then you coming on behalf of them. But then now I was going to say it probably completely changed the vibe in what you thought you were going to go do at first.
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, I think that it was interesting because I think that me going as somebody who was working as a sponsor for the first 3 years really kind of gave me an appreciation for what it was just going as a radio talent later on, or as an attendee later on. But at the same time, like, I don't hate the times that I was working for Wise Brother, because I learned a lot, and I got to be the guy that bought everyone drinks a few times, and it was really cool. And I will say, like, at that point, that was just cool in general, because like, not only is it just like a fun place to be in, where you're like, with that job, you're there to meet people and get them to know about your product, whatever that product is. And for me, it was, I got to go out, and I'm just, I'm outgoing as it is. And it's like, then getting out there, but it was like, it forced me to talk to every single person there. Yeah. And that was something that, I still cherish to this day. And why I know a lot of people in radio was because, I got thrown into boot camp, and then it was like, oh, you have to go talk to them and tell them about Studio Think Tank. And it's like, all right, well, here we go. And then on top of that, buy them a drink. And it's like, let me tell you, if the time that you can go to a bar and just be like, hey, this round's on me, and you mean it, oh, it's fantastic.
Yeah, you're like everybody's best friend at that point.
It was amazing. I got offered so many things that first few boot camps. But then, like, being able to go and, the first 3, it was a lot of work, and it was, setting things up and working and all that kind of stuff at boot camp. It was very tiring. It was just a very different vibe than going as, just an attendee. So then 2016, I took the job here in Seattle with BJ and Steve, and it was that very Stanley Tucci moment for me. Like, I finally get to go to boot camp and enjoy boot camp. And it happened to be in Chicago that year, so it was super cool because I had never really gone out and got to see Chicago. I mean, I did the Bean, but it was like off of 4 hours of sleep in between
Tell
panels.
that story actually really quick though.
Well, the first day that we got there, because we'd fly in a day early as vendors, as you call them. Fancy. It sounds so much fancier than sponsors. Anyway, we would fly in the day before, and it was all about, setting at the time, and I think they still do. I don't really know. Wise Brother had, tabletop things. We had like a backdrop. We had like huge posters that we needed to hang. We had like standalone posters. And so Wednesday was dedicated all day to just setting all of that up. And when you work for a company, you want it to look really nice. And at that point, I didn't even know what that meant. So it was like, of course, like our big boss was there, and he was very particular about the way he wanted things. So it took all day Wednesday setting things up. And I'm talking like you get there at like 10 a.m. and you go until like probably 8 p.m. And then, as everyone knows, 8 p.m. is when people start going to the bars because people have arrived during the day on Wednesday. And, at that point, it's you're on. You throw on the blazer, throw on the Wise Brothers shirt, you go down to the bar, and it's all about networking at that point. It's all about talking, and it's just very tiring. So here I am thinking, like, I'm going to go get to try deep dish pizza. I'm going to get to go to the Bean. I've never been anywhere outside of New Mexico at this point. No, I had, but just not anywhere like, I'd never been anywhere east of New Mexico at this point. I think maybe like once to Florida and like once to Dallas, ironically enough. And I don't even remember if that's true at that point. But so like going to Chicago was like, that's the third biggest city in the world, like, or in America. Like, it's going to be awesome. Then I work for 12 hours and I'm like, I just want to die in bed. And so like I go home, because then of course, then you wake up Thursday morning super early and you're on all day long. And, it's, again, you're there representing a company. So it's not like you can just, go and leave and be like, hey guys, I'll see you guys in a couple hours. I'm going to go check out the sites. Like, no, you're there to work. You're there to, again, be part of the company. And so for me, it was like really hard to, or not really hard. It was just, there was just not a lot of downtime. So that first day, I just remember working and so much talking, almost lost my voice, so tired. Then again, you wake up and do it all again Friday. And Friday, I remember it was one of those like, all right, so a couple of my coworkers were like, we had an hour lunch or something like that we were taking, which is weird. Cause like, now that I say that out loud, I don't even remember why we took time. It might've been between sessions actually, or between like sessions and like the happy hour that was going to happen on. And I actually, now that I say it out loud, it probably was on Thursday night. I don't remember. There was time. There was like an hour time that we had. And I was like, I'm not going to take a nap. All my coworkers went to take a nap. I was like, I'm not going to take a nap. I'm going to the Bean. I want to see that stupid Bean. Yeah. And so I had my like little notebook. I had my, backpack, and I walked down to the Bean and took a picture in front of it. And it's just me being like super stoked, but you can also just see how tired I look. And then after, like, I walked back, because at the time it was at the Renaissance Inn or Resonance or whatever in Chicago. And it was like a good 20-minute walk and then a good 20-minute walk back. And Chicago in August is like, 80% humidity, 95 degrees outside. So not fun, but I did it, and I took the picture and then walked back. And I remember I got back and went up to my room, used the bathroom, and like washed my face, and then like put on my blazer and went back downstairs for the happy hour. And I remember my coworkers were like, oh, did you have a good nap? And I was like, no, I went to go see the Bean, and I like showed them the picture, and they're like, are you kidding me? I was like, yeah, I mean, that was the only time I had. And they were like, wow, that's crazy. Like, there's absolutely no way you could have convinced any of us to do that. And I was like, yeah, like, well, I mean, at this point, this is my only time to do it. So
you do have a lot of energy, what I've learned.
All over the place, and then, I mean, in subsequent years, like there was my friend Mandy Williamson, and she was on a show she used to do a show with Holly and Miguel, but then she took her own show, and I ended up going with her and her co-host to get deep dish, just the three of us. And I remember it's because she had a gift card from Dawn, oddly enough, and I don't know why she had a gift card from Dawn, but she had a gift card from Dawn, and she's like, Danny, I have like $150. Let's go get deep dish. And I was like, go. And so I went. And then that was one time. And then the year before I started working for Steven And BJ, I actually went out on Friday night. I went out with Sarah and Vicky on our show, and we went and did like the clubs in Chicago. But that was again, that was one of those nights that like I thought that I was going to die in bed, and I ended up rallying and going out and stuff like that. But I feel like that's something that like you need to do, regardless if you're a vendor or you're just attending boot camp. There's a lot going on. There's a lot to do. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot to talk. And at the end of the day, it's like if you just have the energy to go and really meet people and really do it, because I think that's where a lot of the value from boot camp comes from.
When you went on site and you were interviewing people on site, that you were still with Wise Brothers, right?
Yeah, that was an idea I had where it was for Studio Think Tank, and it was at the time we were doing these things called Studio Think Tank live chats. And so it's kind of like the idea behind it was like we should, since Studio Think Tank kind of was a very online version of boot camp throughout the year to an extent, right? Like it's like there was just a lot of idea sharing and a lot of like if you had questions, you could go and post there, and it wasn't as toxic as Radio Peeps. You could go there and you could really like get advice and stuff. And I think that so we came up with an idea of my bosses came to me and were like, hey, how can we add more value to Studio Think Tank? And one of my ideas was to do Studio Think Tank live chats where we would have a panel. I would host them and, have different people on. There would be a theme each time and, talk about kind of like at boot camp where you have a panel and you ask different things. So we had like a producer one, we had a Battle of the Bits one, we had I can't remember all of them. We had idea sharing set, whatever. We did a bunch of different ones. And so it was basically before Zoom was a thing and before like digital like meeting places were a thing, we used Google Hangouts. I remember that was the one that made the most sense to us. And so I set up an account and then I would invite people on, people would come in and then we would record it and post them live. And so when we were going to boot camp that year, I think this was 2015-ish, 14, I don't know, whatever. We decided that, I decided that I was going to do a live one at boot camp. So pull people in, have people come and interview and talk about boot camp. And then I also decided that I was just going to do a recap of it. And so those are all on YouTube somewhere and you can go check them out. But it was a lot of fun. I mean, we had a lot of fun doing all the live chats, especially at boot camp, because it just kind of felt like, again, just this big party. So getting back to just your question about just going different as like a vendor / an attendee, I think that for me, really going back into or really getting into it as an attendee was a lot different vibe, but it was also, I got to finally go to the panels and really see what the panels were about. And I think that for me, that's kind of where a lot of my inspiration came from for wanting to eventually help Don in any way I could. I think that I could be wrong in saying this, but I think that every radio person who attends boot camp to some extent wants to improve boot camp because it's a passion thing. It's like we go to boot camp every year because it's such a reinvigorating experience for a lot of people, and then being able to go and like hear new ideas, network with new people, see what other people are doing in other markets. It really kind of puts you back into like an area of creative mindset where you really want to improve your show, your station when you get back. And I think that for me, when I saw all that kind of things, I'm a person. It's really hard for me to get involved with something that I find that I'm really stoked about and not want to get involved. And I think
make it better kind of thing.
To me, not even make it better, just I just want to help. Like I want to help with I didn't think that Don needed help necessarily, but it was just one of those things of like, hey, like if you need me to host anything, if you need me to do this, and for me, like honestly, like I don't like being on panels because being on panels is it's nerve-wracking. I get nervous, all the above. Plus I just don't think that I have a lot to say a lot of times. So then it was like, well, I got to be on a couple of producer panels, and then Don asked me to host a couple of producer panels. And I really like the idea of hosting more so than not, because it was like, well, how do I spotlight the people that are on my panels? And I think that was really important to me because, again, it's all about wanting to I want people to get get something out of my panel. And then, that at that point, that just kind of translated to, I want people to get something out of boot camp. I don't want them to come to this and feel like, oh, why did I come? Whether it's they get a job out of it, whether it's they get a new friend out of it, whether it's they get an idea out of it that they can use on their show, whatever it may be. It's like, I want that to happen. And so last year when we went and then I got connected with you, knowing Don for 10 years now, it's been one of those things for me that it was just like, when we started talking about like, well, how can we improve it? It was like, again, I don't even think it necessarily needs to be improved. I think that it needs to be updated in terms of who's attending. And that's kind of where you and I started talking of like, let's take Don's idea of boot camp and just really help him bring it to 2023.
First of all, thank you, because it's really great. And I love having people that are passionate about that, about things like that, because then it makes it easier and fun rather than just like, oh, we're sitting here working. How can we figure out how to make Danny better? So a lot of people want to help because they want to do, get something out of it. I want to help you because I want to get something. Whereas like I've gotten from you is that you want to help, as you said, because you care about your peers and other people and how this can be a good thing for them.
Yeah. And I mean, okay, it's, I'll put it this way. Everything looks good on a resume, right? And I think that unfortunately, a lot of times people, it's, again, like you said, it's no hate to anyone in particular. It's no hate to anyone who thinks this way. Cause I there is a lot of people in this world, and I'm one of them. Like everyone are. Like you want the next job, you want the higher paying money, you want this, that, and the other. And I think that a lot of times what I've learned is that there's just a lot of people who want the spotlight because spotlight means dollar signs usually. And it's like, at the end of the day, that's great. But I think that what Don, Marie and I have gone to dinner with Don a few times. At the end of the day, what comes out of those every meeting that we have with Don is just that he just wants to show he cares about talent. And I think that that's such a big part of what I've always gotten from boot camp without him even saying it. It's just, we're all in this together. We're all in the same industry. And whether or not, whatever the state of the industry is, I hate, as I've said before, and I'll die on this hill. I think that, so many people hate radio or have such a distaste in their mouth for radio. And it's like, you know what, then fucking go get a job at Amazon. It's 10 times worse there. I guarantee it. Our industry is not the worst. Our industry needs improvement. Our industry needs, but every industry does. It doesn't matter what you do. Like, unless you're a fucking doctor and you don't have to deal with bullshit. And I'm sure they do too. So at the end of the day, it just frustrates me to hear that like our industry sucks, because I don't really think it does. I think that life sucks sometimes, and it's just we have to deal with it, But anyway, what I mean by that though is just that I think that at the end of the day, I think that there are people in this industry who really do care about just talent and where radio goes and stuff like that. And I think that a lot of them fill that room at boot camp every year. And whether or not they have egos, they want to be on panels, whatever. At the end of the day, they're there for a reason. And I think that if we can get more people involved who just want to help other people out, that's where you find a lot of gold.
No, you're not hosting a panel or on a panel this year, but
thank God.
A lot of the stuff on the back end. And obviously you've been planning with us since back, literally since last year, since right after it ended. What are you excited for this year as being somebody that's been on the back end?
I mean, I'm honestly actually excited not to be on a panel this year.
Less pressure.
There's less, and there's less pressure in terms of just, I think, again, I'm just not a person that really enjoys the spotlight a lot. So it's especially, as a moderator last year, I really wanted to spotlight Steph and Jenny, who were the two producers that I really wanted on my panel. And, I brought them up with their hosts because I wanted, I figured at that point, my idea of having Jenny and Steph on having their hosts on there with them was who can better tell why they thought they deserved the producer job than their hosts. A lot of times the host is a host of a show holds a lot of power in their hands, being able to tell, management, who they want to hire. So let's spotlight them. That all being said, my idea I think it manifested well. At the end of the day, though, I think that I got so in my head before about moderating a panel and stuff like that. It was just, there was a lot of nerves involved. So this year I like being on the back end and, being able to help influence the different panels. One of the biggest things that I'm super excited about this year is, having a couple of different panels in that we haven't had done before. We are doing an AI panel, which AI is the hottest trigger word of 2023, I would imagine. And, we announced the other day that AI Ashley is going to be there. And, somebody like that who is not only a radio talent, but then is also taking, I don't want to say taking initiative because I've never talked to her before, but I would say who is open to the idea of using her voice in a new way is so exciting. And I think it's so exciting for our industry in different ways. And I know everyone's scared, but at the same time, it's going to be so interesting to hear her point of view on why she decided to do that. And, at the end of the day, I think that some people in our industry are so scared that it's like they automatically go negative. And it's like, oh, it's going to take over. It's going to take my job. And at the end of the day, it's like, well, how about we just, instead of being scared of it, how about we embrace it? How about we figure out a way to make AI work for us as opposed to not? And, at the end of the day, I think that's going to be a really exciting panel. And then the second one is the mental health panel. And as we started this podcast, I don't even know if you're going to put that part in here, but, it's been a weird fucking 3 years, 4 years, 5. It's been a weird life. And, I think that that's something in the past few years we've been able to really kind of look at and acknowledge about the human existence is that there's a lot of people. What is normal? Like, there is no such thing as normal, if you ask me. Everyone has their own issues, their own problems that they have to work for. And at that point, I think it's such an important panel that we have people who have been through it talk about how they've gotten through, how they've survived in this industry when it is a very stressful, high demanding job sometimes, or ego driven jobs. And you see people, when you see people take jobs, when you see AI Ashley take your job, how do you handle that mentally? It's, at the end of the day, I think that that's such an important panel that we're having. So I'm so super stoked that we were able to like figure those out and bring that to boot camp this year. And be part of it, be part of it on the back end. And I don't want to host it because I don't know what I'm going to say, but like at the end of the day, like I know that there's a lot to be said about it. So working with you and Dawn, I can't talk today, has just been awesome in terms of being able to figure out a new location. And, I'm excited to go to Dallas. As much as I love Chicago, and I bring up Chicago as the thing because I feel like Chicago is always kind of Dawn's go-to in terms of bringing people together, and it's a great location. Don't get me wrong, but being able to go to a different state, different city, and experience that with my radio fam is going to be awesome. Like we get to go, and check out just like a new area. Plus the hotel that we're staying at this year is like 40,000 times better than any hotel I've stayed in semi-recently. So I'm like, let's go.
I didn't mention yet that we had done a site visit there, earlier this year to really take it in, which I think, first of all, was super helpful. But yeah, definitely different. That's kind of what I've been telling people too, is, boot camp, you're kind of going with more Chicago, that kind of more big city kind of feel. There's a lot to do right around there, a lot to walk to. A lot, and it's like Dallas, there is a lot around too. It's just, first of all, hotter, I guess, but I got a more intimate feel just in general.
Well, I mean, it's uptown, and I think that's the basic way that I can describe it, as opposed to a downtown. Downtown Chicago is its own energy, and then you get to uptown Dallas, and it's like, it's a nice little neighborhood, quiet neyborhood, which is going to be wrecked by a bunch of radio people. And but then there's a pool, there's a gym, there's a couple of bars within walking, but it's like they're like nice bars that are kind of like in the business district, as opposed to like and Chicago's great. However, you could fall into like 15 bars just by walking. Whereas like this one, you have to be a little bit more selective of where you go, just because there's not a ton you don't walk into 15 bars. It's like But then there are that's, there's a short Uber ride away and you could be in a spot where you can fall into 15 bars. So it's like, I don't know. I'm excited. I'm excited to see what the vibe is this year, because I think that it was definitely a different vibe when we switched to Atlanta for a couple of years there. And I think that Dallas is kind of a mix between the two, because like Dallas, or when we were in Atlanta, it was like in, I would call it like an uptown too, but it was a very like different spot. Like you couldn't get anywhere easily. Let's put it that way.
Oh, okay.
So you kind of had to stay in that area. Whereas like Chicago, you can go all over the place. And like Dallas, I feel it's like a good mix between the two. Like you want to go to the bars, you want to go to the party scene, you can. If not, you can just stay in the uptown area and have coffee in the morning and go for a dip in the pool. You just don't know what's going to happen a lot of times. I've been pulled into Ubers last minute and taken downtown to clubs that I don't remember the names of, and but then on the opposite side, I've found myself at a gay pride festival and getting a tattoo, and in Chicago, there's been so many different experiences at boot camp, and that's why it's like such an exciting time to go, because it's like, well, after all the work's done of the day of listening to panels and great ideas and all of the above, then it's like, all right, let's get out and relax a little bit.
Yeah, I like having your perspective too, from kind of doing it over the years and being able to talk about the ways you get pulled into things. I know that was like a big thing that people say even before I got there too, especially when it came to like the lunches and stuff. Just like, if you don't know what to do, just like kind of go around. Like people will drag you. You'll find somewhere to just kind of follow somebody.
Whether you're coming this year or not to boot camp, I think that it's something that you need to put on your docket, just in terms of it's a great way to take a vacation from your job and get reinvigorated with ideas and passion about our industry, and then also just a way to relax and really kind of just like, let loose for a few days and just kind of like go and relax and go have a drink, go have some barbecue and all of the above. I'm excited for the barbecue as well.
What would you say for this year about boot camp? Why somebody that maybe has never gone, why they should go? Or somebody that's gone in the past and like, boot camp's not my thing anymore.
To a person that would say that boot camp isn't their thing anymore, I would say it's always your thing. If you're still in this industry and you still want to be in this industry, boot camp is something that you should just always go to in general, and not talking from a person who, works for a morning show boot camp. This is just coming from a person that's in radio. I think I've had this conversation with BJ. I've had this conversation with a lot of people, and it's like, why, if you're given the opportunity to improve yourself in any way, it doesn't have to be even professionally. If you're given the chance to improve yourself in your career, in your personal life, in your friendships, in your relationships, anything, why wouldn't you do it? So I think that to hear people say that, like, oh, boot camp's not my thing anymore. It's like, well, do you work in radio? Yes, I do. Okay, cool. Well, then you should probably be at boot camp every year, because even if you don't get an idea, even if there's not one thing you get from a panel anymore, you might find a friend at the bar afterwards. You might meet somebody you've never met before, and you might get a new perspective on our industry. You might get a bit that you've never even thought of at the bar while drinking with Rick Rumble. You might meet somebody new. You might try some new food, and you might get a reset, a relax that you need away from your job for a couple of days to come and just hang out with people who all are doing the same thing you're doing. So to me, it's if you want to work in radio, if you want to work in any aspect of radio too, mornings, afternoons, nights, promotion, anything like that, I think that boot camp is such an important aspect of what we do, because I think that it's just a way for you to go and get away with people that think the same way as you do. To some extent, we're all we chose radio for a reason, and at that point, I think it's you will get something from it in general. And for the question of somebody who's never been before, I think that it's never a bad time to start going. I've talked to a couple of people who are out of the industry right now, whether it's because of layoffs or they just don't want to be in it, and they still want to come to boot camp. And I think it's because it's, they get something out of it every year, once again, whatever it may be. So if you're coming for the first time, it's just an exciting place to be. It's an exciting place to come and see passion about our industry when you don't necessarily get that on any social media site or, just talk. How often do you talk to radio people? You might talk to the people at your station. Like I was saying earlier, like you might know the people at your station. You might know the people across the street. You might know your competition. For the most part, you don't know a lot of people in this industry. And that's what the Radio Fam does, is bring people together. And that's what Morning Show Bootcamp does, is bringing people that are in our industry, think like-mindedly, and really, really, I would say really care about each other to, bring them all together and kind of see it. It's such a fun and exciting time to go. Every summer, it's one of those things that I look forward to. So,
well, thanks for coming on. This is great, and love hearing your perspective. I mean, they hear me talk about boot camp all the time. In like a lot of the intros, as it gets closer, I kind of just plug it a lot and let everybody know. So thank you so much for coming on, and we're really excited. If you see Danny at the bar, he may or may not buy you a drink. So actually, he'll probably he'll point you to BJ to go do it.
Yeah. BJ buys all the drinks, and you can tell him I said so. And if he says no, then just call him a liar, and then make him buy you a drink anyway. But no, I can't wait. I can't wait for everyone to come and see Dallas and really experience what me and Marie did back in February. It might be a little bit hotter, but you know what? Man up, wear a swimsuit, go naked.
Yeah, we got a pool this time. What the hell?
Yeah, we do. That was one thing with Chicago for the past 3 years. They did not have a pool. Like when I looked up the Swiss Hotel, and I was like, and no offense, I love the Swiss Hotel except for the stink there in the morning. But beyond that, they didn't have a pool, and I was like, how do you not have a pool? It's like one of the biggest hotels in downtown Chicago, and you don't have a pool. What is happening? So the fact that they have a rooftop pool with like infinity pool this time, I am going to be naked in there all the time. I'm not. Don't call me.
Oh, darn it.
That should be fun.
All right. Thanks so much, Danny.